COBIT 5 Foundation Certificate. Module 4, COBIT 5 Implementation. Lesson 1. Welcome to this lesson, where we'll study the implementation of COBIT 5. The topics covered include the implementation lifecycle, the internal and external factors to be considered, pain points and trigger events, and making a business case. This is a foundation course, and so covers just the basics. It is based on material in the COBIT 5 framework publication. A more detailed treatment is available in the publication COBIT 5 Implementation, which is available from the ISACA website. The information in this module relates to the fourth part of the syllabus, Syllabus Area Code IM. Remember, it's strongly recommended that you carry out further reading in the COBIT 5 Guide, A Business Framework for the Governance and Management of Enterprise IT, as part of your exam preparation. You can use your syllabus document to identify areas in the guide for further reading as part of your self-study. The syllabus document is provided in your course download area. You will understand by now that COBIT offers much useful advice and guidance for the governance and management of enterprise IT. The guidance provided by COBIT is just that, guidance. Each enterprise must use that guidance to develop an implementation that is appropriate to their specific needs. Let's start this lesson with an exercise. Aim to spend 20 minutes on this exercise, and don't forget to check out your study guide for a suggested solution. What internal and external factors should you take into consideration when planning the implementation of COBIT 5? To get value from COBIT requires a properly planned and managed approach. It will not be successful if done in a piecemeal fashion. For example, implementation should be done top-down. That is, if not initiated by top management, it must certainly be backed and driven by them. And that support must be ongoing. There should be a declared business purpose for the initiative, and that purpose must be clear to all stakeholders. More generally, the recognized good practices for organizational change and stakeholder management must be employed. For example, communication and seeking out quick wins to gain and maintain buy-in. And implementing COBIT is a continual improvement activity. There is rarely, if ever, a greenfield site. Some practices will already be in place in some form. They may not be carried out in a formal way, but something is being done. The advice must always be to try to build on what is already being done. COBIT describes a life cycle approach to implementation, which will ensure a properly planned, managed, and sustained implementation. The three components of the life cycle are illustrated on the screen. They are: at the core is the continual improvement life cycle, which is concerned with the implementation itself. The next component is change enablement. This is concerned with the stakeholder aspects such as getting by, motivation for change, and overcoming resistance. This is often the most challenging aspect of the implementation, but for long-term success, it is vitally important. The COBIT guidance here draws on the work of John Cotter, a recognized authority on organizational change. Some of you may recognize his 8 steps to transform your organization. The outermost layer is program management. This is concerned with managing the inner layers in terms of resources, money, and time. As we'll see later, these three are interrelated. The diagram on your screen shows the 7 phases of the implementation lifecycle. The lifecycle approach is structured by 7 questions. What are the drivers? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? What needs to be done? How do we get there? Did we get there? And how do we keep the momentum going? Over the next few screens, we'll examine each of the phases more closely. The first phase is to understand the factors that are driving the implementation. A big mistake that is often made is to adopt a framework or a standard for its own sake, in order to be able to say, "Look, we are COBIT compliant," for example. COBIT is a means to an end, not an end in itself. The reason for implementing COBIT is to improve the governance and management of the enterprise. The theory of continual improvement is widely accepted, but in practice, many enterprises only initiate an improvement program if there is seen to be a clear need. Certainly, it's far easier to get the necessary finance and resources if there are specific drivers. The purpose of Phase 1 is to identify those drivers. There are two types of driver for change of any sort. First, pain points. Pain points are issues that the enterprise is experiencing. We as individuals change our behavior in similar circumstances. For example, people often adopt a more healthy lifestyle after an illness or other medical event. And also, trigger events. A trigger event is some wider change that impacts the enterprise and necessitates change. Taking a new job or locating to a new city often gives people the opportunity to reinvent themselves. Let's do another exercise. Aim to spend 20 minutes on this exercise, and don't forget to check out your study guide for some of our ideas. List some examples of pain points and trigger events that might lead an enterprise to implement COBIT. Try to use your life and work experiences to come up with some specific examples. Let's summarize this phase and relate it to the three components of the life cycle. The inner ring, the continual improvement life cycle, is concerned to identify pain points and trigger events. The change enablement ring translates these into evidence for the need for action and creates a sense of urgency. And the outer ring is where top management accepts the evidence and initiates a program of improvement. Phase 2 is characterized by the question, where are we now? The drivers identified in Phase 1 are linked to enterprise goals, and then by means of the COBIT goals, cascade to IT-related goals, and then to IT processes. This will define the scope of the improvement program. The scope can be further defined and prioritized by evaluating relevant risk scenarios. It is best to focus on a small number of key areas, otherwise momentum can be lost. It is often necessary to go through several iterations of the life cycle, picking up new opportunities each time. Having identified the scope, the relevant processes and other enablers can be assessed in detail by means of a process capability assessment. Let's summarize this phase and relate it to the three components of the life cycle. The inner ring is concerned with identifying opportunities for improvement, as described on the last screen. The change enablement ring is about driving change forward by establishing what John Cotter calls a guiding coalition. This group should have a good understanding of business requirements and the influencing factors. And the outer ring is where the pain points and trigger events are related to governance opportunities and problems. Phase 3 is characterized by the question, where do we want to be? This phase identifies improvement opportunities based on the analysis performed in Phase 2. Improvements will be different in terms of cost, benefit, and payback time. Priority should be given to those improvements that give most benefit, quickly and cheaply, so as to build and maintain commitment. Of course, longer-term opportunities should not be ignored. They can be pursued in parallel with the quick wins. Specific objectives should be defined for each improvement. Let's now relate this phase to the three life cycle components. From the program management perspective, this phase involves developing a high-level plan or roadmap that sets out a vision for the future. Change enablement is gaining and maintaining commitment by communicating the vision to all stakeholders. The continual improvement life cycle performs gap analyses to identify and quantify improvement opportunities. What needs to be done is the next phase of the life cycle. This is where detailed project plans are drawn up for each of the identified improvements. Each project should be supported by a formal business case, which will identify the benefits of the improvement. This will help to get buy-in at the outset and allow its success to be measured on completion. Phase 4 plans practical solutions by defining projects supported by justifiable business cases. A change plan for implementation is also developed. A well-developed business case helps to ensure that the project's benefits are identified and monitored. A good business case should address a number of issues, including the expected business benefits of the improvement. The emphasis here is on business. The benefits should be related to the enterprise goals, pain points, and trigger events. The business changes needed to deliver the benefits. A description of what will be improved and how. The investment required. The ongoing costs, including both IT and business costs. Other issues addressed by a business case are an assessment of any associated risks, roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities related to the initiative, who will do what, how the costs and benefits will be monitored throughout the economic life cycle. Let's now relate this phase to the 3 life cycle components. From the program management perspective, this phase involves developing a set of formal projects. Change enablement is empowering role players and identifying quick wins. At this stage, it is important to involve those affected by the proposed changes in the detailed planning. This is a simple yet effective way of overcoming resistance and getting buy-in. We've already mentioned the value of quick wins. The continual improvement life cycle develops detailed project plans that consider the means, resources, costs, timescales, risks, and deliverables. Phase 5 is characterized by the question, how do we get there? To which the simple answer is, carry out the plan. This phase is straightforward project execution, involving regular reporting to stakeholders, and monitoring and measuring progress in terms of the plan and its deliverables. Metrics for deliverables will be aligned with the goals and metrics defined by COBIT. Let's now relate this phase to the 3 life cycle components. From the program management perspective, this phase involves managing the projects. Change enablement is about bringing the new way of working into normal operational use. It means working closely with those affected to gain acceptance. Success breeds success, of course. Success in one improvement project will help to gain acceptance for the next. The continual improvement life cycle phase is implementing the changes. Phase 6 is, did we get there? This phase focuses on the sustainable operation of the changed practices. In other words, did the project deliver the benefits that were expected? And were the benefits achieved within the planned cost, time, and resource parameters? In each case, actual outcomes should be compared with the business case. Let's relate this phase to the 3 life cycle components. The program management component addresses the benefits realization. Change enablement is about embedding the new ways of working into usual working practices, including whether new roles and responsibilities have been accepted. Continual improvement sets targets for each operational metric, measures performance accordingly, and takes remedial action as necessary. The final phase is, how do we keep the momentum going? The point here is that improvement activities should be ongoing and never-ending, continual in other words. So how can we ensure that this happens? How do we maintain the momentum of improvement? This is a real issue. In many cases, programs simply fizzle out. A formal review at the end of each continual improvement cycle will generate an assessment of achievements that can be used to maintain interest and enthusiasm. The review can also identify new opportunities. And we shouldn't forget that a review will enable lessons to be learned that will feed into the next cycle of improvement. This phase relates to the 3 components of the life cycle as follows. Program management carries out a formal review to understand how well the program has achieved its objectives. Change enablement continues to maintain acceptance and prevent reversion to old ways of working. This can be done by rewarding positive behavior and by continuing to communicate achievements and management commitment. Continual improvement draws lessons from program experience. For revision purposes, You will find a table in the study guide that presents the phases and components of the continual improvement lifecycle in an easy-to-read format. You should study this before taking the exam. Okay, that completes this lesson on the implementation of COBIT. You've learned about the implementation lifecycle, the internal and external factors to be considered, pain points and trigger events, and making a business case.